Me, 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 me.
Me, 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 me.
Me, 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 me.
Oh. Wow. Welcome to Overthink This podcast. My name is Kyle.
My name's Macy.
And this week it's All Hallows Eve. Woo!
It is today, but actually.
Oh well.
Uh-oh.
The day we're recording it is. What?
Oh.
What?
I thought this episode was going to come out on election day, but it won't. It'll be past that. It'll be 2 days past.
All right. So
we don't know what's happening or what will happen. So when this episode comes out, we don't know as of right now who will be president. And we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about something else.
Okay.
Involving the government.
But just saying, we're recording this on
Hallows Eve.
Womp, 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 womp. All right.
Okay. Okay, so this is in no relation to your story last week. Like, I didn't get this idea after you told your story.
So
It's
this
just
is
like,
the second time you've said this.
I know, because I already had this planned.
Okay.
And then you gave me your story, but this isn't like it's like involving airplanes, but not really on the same. It's not really the same.
What am I supposed to do with the thumbnail now?
I don't know.
All right.
No more airplanes.
All right.
Okay, today I'm talking about 9/11 conspiracy theories. Dun dun dun.
This cuts deep.
Yeah, I think you might have some things to say about it.
I mean, sure.
Sure.
As a lot of people would, I think.
Bush did 9/11?
Yeah.
Was that a question or a statement?
Yeah. Well, I remember when they first conspiracy theories were coming out, like Michael
It was
Moore
like that month.
did that one. Obviously, you're going to get into it, but basically, a lot of them are saying that it was an inside job.
Mm-hmm.
Bush knew about it, which is why he reacted the way he did when he was told.
No, like no reaction.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And so
I don't know if I like blame him for that reaction.
No.
Just because, like, what if somebody told me that?
Yeah, if somebody told me that, I don't know how I would.
I probably would just be like on not believing it.
Well, I would probably do what he did and sit there and pretend to listen to the kids read and be like.
Yeah, because the best thing to do in his scenario was to not freak out in front of like first graders.
Yeah. Fair. He employed enough staff to go ahead and handle the initial lockdowns and things that needed to happen thereafter, but anyways, yeah. I'm sure you'll.
So I do want to preface this with I was like fairly young when this happened. Also, I lived in Malaysia, so I have no recollection of this event occurring, so I have no emotional connection to it like some people do, you know?
When it happened, I didn't even understand really what was going on at all. Like, it just didn't hit me right away at all that the gravity of the situation.
Yeah, so I don't want to take away from
I was of age, like I should have known. I'll take full ownership of that. It just didn't register. It's so strange, but it just didn't register.
Yeah, so I also want to say I don't. Just because I'm talking about these conspiracies doesn't mean I necessarily agree with or believe what they're saying. Sure. And we'll get to that. We'll like come to the conclusion at the end. So yeah, I don't want to upset anybody.
Well, even if people are upset,
then everybody gets upset over everything.
Okay.
I don't know what to tell you. Then be upset. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about the most, like, there's multiple conspiracy theories, but the main one that I'm going to talk about, can you guess maybe, like, why people think that it's fake?
I mean, there's so many, I don't even know where to begin. Like,
Okay.
there's so many reasons why people think it's fake. It could be, it's infinite, really. I think just go ahead and...
Okay, so when Googling about like 9/11 conspiracy theories, the biggest piece of evidence that conspiracy theorists point to is the way the towers fell, and that it looks like a controlled demolition instead of just an accidental like collapse due to fires.
Sure.
And there's some interesting arguments towards that point, but then also a lot of good counter arguments against that point.
Well, at least from my knowledge, they fell like perfectly. They fell straight well, perfectly.
Oh yeah, so
Grain
I
of salt.
did.
It fell straight down though, as opposed to just toppling.
Yes, and I did see somewhere at some point, and could not find it in my research, that they were specifically built for, in the case of that event, that they would fall, it would fall straight down. Like something in the design of it was specifically made so that they would fall
that it
straight
would
down.
Collapse.
But I couldn't find any article or anything about the architecture.
No blueprints or anything
Of the building.
When was it built?
I was looking at when they fell. I wasn't looking at when they were erected.
Yeah. I think they were built in like the
80s?
early 80s. Yeah.
I want to say 1987.
Yeah.
Oh, 1970.
Oh,
Way
shit.
off. Okay,
yeah,
wow.
okay.
They were standing for 31 years before they came down. I didn't even know that. I thought they were like relatively new and then got attacked right away. I don't know. I
knew they weren't new, but I didn't think they were from the 70s. Yeah, no. I would say 80, 10 years later.
Anyway.
All right.
Okay, so a lot of people believe that when the Twin Towers collapsed, it was as a result of a controlled demolition. This means that the collapse of the Twin Towers was not caused only by the airliner crash damage, but that explosives were installed in the buildings prior to the attacks.
Yeah, because there's video of below where the planes hit, little ignitions going off.
Which I couldn't find on YouTube anymore.
You couldn't?
I couldn't find it.
I used to see it all the time.
I used to see it all the time, but honestly, the last time that I was like looking into 9/11 conspiracy theories pretty deeply was at least 6 or 7 years ago. And as of like today, I couldn't find anything.
I have a specific memory of that video.
I think it was like the same sort of conspiracy documentary that was like floating around. It was like 7 or 8 years ago.
I think it was Michael Moore, right? Who does he did the healthcare documentary where he took a bunch of ill patients to Canada to get their medicine, just to show how easy it was. He's a documentarian, and I think it was part of his video.
Okay. I'm not really sure. I just know it was like floating around and a lot of people were reviewing it. And so I ended up seeing it because it was like pretty popular.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find it anywhere on YouTube. And I think that all those conspiracy things probably just got taken down.
Which adds to the layer of the conspiracy.
Is my guess. So advocates such as physicist Stephen E. Jones from Brigham Young University believe that the use of thermite was deployed to create the symmetrical collapse, and I mentioned is what is seen on video, that it's like a brown dust that like comes out like it's being exploded shoots, out below where it's collapsing. Yeah, which is kind of interesting, which you can see it on video. Stephen E. Jones like wrote a little like report or research paper and presented it, and then was asked by the college to like leave.
He was asked to leave BYU
because he was writing he wrote a report about
because he was writing controversial.
It was controversial, and they because people are really emotionally tied to this attack, obviously, because it was horrible. People lost a lot of people they knew. Nobody wants to believe the government is attacking its own citizens, and so you receive a lot of backlash, especially being one of the first people to come out and say, I think the government did it.
Yeah, I guess at that time it's a very difficult thing. Well, saying your government did it was a very counter argument to anything that was going on, because it's like, how at that point it was like, how could that be?
Especially in 2001. I mean, now it's like, I don't know what my government's going to do. And if they do something crazy, I probably wouldn't question why they did that.
But then it was just shocking. For it to be an inside job is just blasphemous. So these people that are stepping out and saying something, it does ring a bunch of bells.
Ring a bell? It rings a bell?
Rings a bunch of bells.
Okay. It sounds alarms. Red flag warnings.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's that guy. He's like kind of in cahoots with this guy Richard Gage, who is an architect who founded Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. In his presentations, which I think has about 800 members, I couldn't find like a specific number. In his presentations, he poses videos of the 3 buildings collapsing alongside footage of controlled demolition. So he's like making comparisons of, also there's 3 buildings that collapse. There's World Trade Center 1 and 2 and World Trade Center 7, which never gets talked about.
I didn't even know.
Yeah, there is a 3rd building that fell that day.
Because of the other 2?
Yes,
okay.
Within the World Trade Center complex. So he shows, and we'll talk about that one because that one's pretty significant in the whole conspiracy theory. But he shows videos of these towers falling next to controlled demolitions, and it just looks very similar. It looks very similar. Like the way they fall in a uniform way. There's not like, oh, one part's on fire and collapses. It's like the whole thing comes down, which is what you do in a controlled demolition. You set it up in a way so that the whole thing comes down in one.
Yeah, it's a controlled fall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a free fall.
Yeah,
that's what they call it. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, which we'll call it NIST from now on, have investigated and rejected these claims and accept that the impacts of the aircrafts led to the collapse of the Twin Towers. So it kind of goes back and forth between NIST and these conspiracy theorists like Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. They go back and forth and kind of like argue each other on what is the truth and what's not the truth. These conspiracy theorists have a lot of criticisms against NIST and their investigations in the attacks, because it takes them like 3 full years. It takes NIST like 3 full years to put out their report after their investigation. They receive a lot of like criticism, and then they have to go back in and relook at stuff, and their final report for World Trade Center 7 is not published until 2008, but we'll get to that. So Gage criticizes NIST for their investigations, claiming the World Trade Center could not have collapsed at the observed speed without breaking apart the support frame with explosives. So that's the biggest issue that a lot of people have, is that because both of the 2 twin towers were hit in the very top, and so that part gets on fire and can obviously weaken. There's a lot of structural damage, like visible, like you can definitely see it. But what about the entire bottom of the building that's not affected by the top crashed part? And that's obviously the bottom, like the base is going to be the strongest part. So how come it was able to like crash all the way down to the bottom? Like, wouldn't you just see part of it coming down and like stop?
What I think when you see it and you see the plane go into, the top portion of the building, it seems like the top part has been severed. That's what it seems like. So that
like the plane goes in and like
should
obliterates
just
and
sort of
out.
I don't know, fall off. You know what I mean? Like if you cut the head off of something like a flower with a sharp knife, and that thing just fall. It does. The whole flower doesn't collapse.
So that's what people are like. That's what people are having a hard time understanding, is how does the bottom part that's like structure intact let all the like the top part just crash down on it?
Why would they engineer it that way? Because like, why would you engineer it like if the top is falling, everything give away? that's just disaster. That's not.
So they're saying that shouldn't have happened.
No,
like it doesn't make sense.
So those planes came in on an angle, and the top part should have just slid off. I don't know a better way to say it.
Not slide off, but it should just be damaged and it shouldn't have collapsed.
Yes.
So Gage claims that each building fell, quote, through what should have been the path of least resistance, and end quote, and could not have happened unless by controlled demolition. So that's what he's saying, is like, this is the most structurally sound part, is the whole bottom of the building. So how is it falling through the path of least resistance? Like, it shouldn't collapse that easily, is what it looks like.
Yeah, it looks like the planes hit, ignitions were sent the whole way down, and the whole thing just went straight down.
Yeah, that's what people think. That's what the conspiracy theorists think.
Well, it's like, all right, so is there any counter to that? What's the counter? Yeah,
I'm getting there.
Okay.
So, also Gage says there's pools of molten iron found in the debris, leading to the conclusion that thermite was used, because this is also a huge argument that people make, is you can't melt steel unless you're at 1300 degrees Celsius at least. Like, it won't melt. But what NIST says is that
the airplane fuel.
No.
Oh.
No, what they're saying is the molten metal, because there's pictures of molten metal at ground zero, like you can see it. I saw a thing where it was like some firefighters were saying it was like pools of lava flowing. I saw the picture. It wasn't that much.
Pools of lava?
It wasn't that much. But so NIST, first of all, says that they couldn't find any definitive evidence that thermite was found, but they also never tested for explosives, so they're heavily criticized for that, because, like, assuming that you're under a terrorist attack, wouldn't that be part of your investigation, is to look for explosives or bombs or anything else dangerous in the area that could have been planted? Because what we know about Al-Qaeda, who's blamed for the attacks, is that they're very famous for suicide bombers. And
yeah, you're saying even in like within the plane, like
not
bombs.
Just within the plane, but within the whole building complex that's
like
under
they were
attack. Why would you not look for explosives or evidence of explosives? You know, they just didn't do that, and so that's why
everything at face value.
That's
like
why
the plane hit, building fell.
Yeah, and so they're heavily criticized for that. Also, a NIST spokesman says that any molten metal sighted or pouring from the South Tower was most likely melted aluminum from the aircraft itself. So they're saying that has a very explainable reason for being there. Also, maybe not just the aluminum from the airplane, but other types of metal that were in the office building that wasn't part of the steel beams of the structure that could have melted because of the fires.
Oh no, melting, that's at that degree.
Not necessarily steel. Aluminum will melt at a much lower
but they were saying lava.
It looked like molten lava.
Yeah, but that takes a lot of coincidences to build a pool of lava, of aluminum that's ignited with heat. It's takes a lot.
Well, this is what NIST's investigation came out with.
Okay.
Gage disputes this by saying that the color of the molten metal rules out aluminum. So there's this back and forth, like,
yeah,
oh, it's aluminum. Oh, there's molten metal. Oh, well, it's aluminum. Oh, the aluminum doesn't turn that color when it's melted. I don't know what aluminum
when were
looks
these
like when
studies
it's melted.
taking place?
This
like for years, right?
Yeah, for years. It took NIST years.
I wonder when these first conclusions were decided on, because it almost seems like maybe around that time or at that time, people wanted a conclusion and were looking for an answer as opposed to an actual finding.
Yeah, so NIST came out with their first, I don't know when their first research paper, I guess you could call it, was published, or their first investigation was published, but they were criticized after that, and then they went into a deeper investigation, and the one specifically on World Trade Center 7 was published in 2008. So 7 years after the attack, they were able to come out with all of the evidence, which posed problems, and we'll get to that when I get there. Okay, so let's go back to thermite and talk about why it's significant with the whole melted metal and stuff. So thermite is a mixture of finely powdered aluminum and iron oxide that produces a very high temperature on combustion. It's used in welding and for incendiary bombs, which are designed specifically to start fires to destroy sensitive equipment. So it's like a military kind of bomb.
Okay.
Thermite is the hottest burning. It's the hottest burning man-made substance in the world and burns at temperatures of more than 2,200 degrees Celsius, which obviously can burn through and melt steel, because steel melts at 1,370 to 1,510 degrees Celsius. So that's why people think thermite was used, because A, it looks like there was explosives used on footage because of the controlled demolition thing. Like, they think it was thermite. And then 2, because there was molten metal, and thermite is the only thing that could melt steel at that temperature. It's like the only thing that could get to that temperature to melt steel.
So they're saying it got to that temperature to melt the steel frame to collapse.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, burning gasoline has a temperature around 945 degrees Celsius, which is what NIST is saying, that it's the fires from the gasoline from the aircraft is
wouldn't
what
be hot enough to melt the steel.
No, NIST is not saying that. NIST is saying that so that's what you're saying is what conspiracy theorists are saying, but NIST is saying that it's the jet fuel burns at is almost 1,000 degrees Celsius.
Yeah, because it's hot.
And NIST is claiming that jet fuel, the fires from that is what is causing the damage to the steel structures. And then people like Gage are saying no, because you can't melt steel unless it's 2,000 degrees Celsius.
Gotcha. So now I know the opposing forces. So NIST is trying to go, no, this is how it happened.
Well, however, structural steel beams begin to soften at 425 degrees Celsius and lose half of their strength around 650 degrees Celsius. So even if it's not melting, it's still, the metal is expanding and it's significantly weakened. Yeah. Like, the structural integrity is not there anymore. And so, yes, it is possible.
Yeah, but does that mean it collapses straight down?
So, yeah, that's what people are saying is like, but the bottom ones aren't affected. So why are those just breaking? Like,
exactly. Same? Yeah. So, okay, that explains, floors X through X, but what about, why are all the other ones just failing without resistance?
Right.
Yeah.
That's what the conspiracy theorists are wondering.
I think I'm a conspiracy theorist.
Are you a conspiracy theorist?
I think I might be.
So now let's talk about World Trade Center 7. World Trade Center 7 was heavily damaged when the North Tower fell, which is the first tower that was hit. When that one fell, a bunch of debris flew from that tower and heavily damaged World Trade Center 7. Yeah. Caused a lot of fires in that building, and then later that day at 5:20 p.m. it collapsed on itself. So it was the third one to fall.
Due to just fire as a result of debris flying out and damaging the building and causing fires. I'm sure that happened to a lot of buildings around the area. But none of them collapsed. Oh, I mean, I'm sure there was a lot of damage due to all the But that's interesting stuff, too. But none of the other ones fell. So how come? Why is it being scrutinized? According to Gage, World Trade Center 7 is the smoking gun. That's what he calls it. Doom, boom. Bum, bum, bum. No. So,
World Trade Center 7 is a 47-story high building that was part of the whole World Trade Center complex. And Gage describes this, like, the collapse of this building as the most evident of controlled demolition. And if you look at videos, it's pretty crazy. It looks fake.
What does?
The way it falls. It doesn't look like a building that would fall because of a fire. Like, the whole thing comes down. Because I think for a building of this size, because it was 47 stories high, but it was a lot wider, so you would expect maybe, like, one side of it to fall, or, like, parts of it to fall, but the whole thing came down at one time.
Timothy McVeigh actively blew up a building with massive explosions, and not even that building fell down.
Who's Timothy McVeigh?
The Unabomber. Nope. Yep. Yeah. He blew up Oklahoma City, like Children's Hospital or something like that. And he blew it up from the bottom up, and not even that building fell. Why are all these buildings just collapsing?
Yeah.
Due to nothing.
I guess were built
very
badly, apparently.
Oh, it got hit by some things, and now the whole wide building 7 is just falling apart.
Apparently. Gage dismisses NIST's explanation that uncontrolled fires and a buckling of a critical support column caused the collapse, and say that would not cause the whole building to fall in a uniform way like it did. So NIST says
these uniform falls are the suspicious part.
Right. So yeah, NIST is saying that when debris fell plus the fires, it severely damaged a very critical support beam in the building, but it's a very, like, wide span building and there's multiple support beams. So Gage is saying, why would just one beam being damaged cause the whole thing to just fall at the same time the way that it did?
The way that the other ones did.
Yeah.
Why are these buildings all built like shit?
Apparently this one was built with a really wide floor span. And because of that, the fires caused weakening of the inside, the center.
Oh, come on.
And so it started to cave in. And you can see, so what NIST says is, like, what you can't see on the video is that the inside of the building probably has already fallen in. And then by the time the outer facade is, like, still intact, and so you can't see what's happening on the inside, and by the time it falls you can see the center kind of cave in a little bit, and then the whole thing comes down. You really would have to watch a video to understand.
No, I get it. I'm picturing it. It just doesn't make sense. Why would the center cave in? It's not
fires weakening the support beams. In his argument, Gage claims that, quote, the rest of the columns could not have been destroyed sequentially so fast to bring this building straight down onto its footprint, end quote.
Yeah.
He also argues that skyscrapers have suffered, quote, hotter, longer lasting, and larger fires and have not collapsed. Buildings that fall in natural processes fall to the path of least resistance. So again, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, it doesn't make sense. Why would all these buildings just collapse on themselves? It's like it was set up that way.
That's what they're saying.
I know, I'm agreeing.
Architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth questions NIST's computer models, saying that any evidence of explosives as a cause of the buildings collapsing were omitted. So again, they're being attacked for not taking that into consideration. The counter argument here that it put is that community of experts in structural mechanics and engineering support the conclusion made by NIST, and the appearance of a controlled demolition can be explained by interior failure of the building that is suggested by the observation of the sagging roof while the facade remains intact. So that's what I was saying earlier, is that they're saying, yes, the center of it is severely damaged and there's a lot of fires weakening the support beams, so the floor starts to cave in the middle of it, but you can't see that from the outside. It looks like the whole building's intact when it's really not. You just can't see it. So when you're looking at the video, it's unsure of how damaged the inside is, but they're saying it's severely damaged. And so when it
where was the smoke going?
Fall,
was there excessive smoke leaving the building?
No, really, no. I mean,
well,
yes, there was smoke, but there's only so much you can see from the video. It's footage from 2001.
Just all sounds so sketchy.
Yeah. So
to use a
again,
very Southern California
NIST is
term. Sketchy.
NIST is criticized for not looking for any physical evidence of explosives, nor did they include eyewitness accounts from first responders or escapees in their initial report.
Yep.
NIST concluded that it was not necessary and alleges that much of the physical evidence would have been destroyed, so they just didn't even bother to look for evidence of explosives and then just came back saying, like, well, it was probably destroyed, but without trying.
Sketchy.
In their initial report. Then, when they were criticized, they came back and did more research and did take in explosives for consideration. I did go and look at their final report for World Trade Center 7, and in Chapter 3, Section 3.3, in Chapter 3, Section 3.1, Gathering of Evidence, it states, quote, while not as plentiful as the imagery for the World Trade Center towers, the cumulative World Trade Center 7 evidence was sufficient to guide the reconstruction of the day's events. As with the World Trade Center towers, much of the information specific to the World Trade Center 7 building construction was lost with the destruction of the World Trade Center site. So they're already saying, like, we lost a lot of information because it collapsed.
How convenient.
Right? I know, when I was reading this, I was like, this doesn't look good.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, copious information was obtained from drawings and specifications, reports, and available records from the Port Authority, Silverstein Properties, and a number of contractors that had worked on the design, construction, or modifications of World Trade Center 7. So they were able, their whole report kind of is based around this, like, computer model, and in their computer model, they, like, built a whole bunch of different options of what happened, or different scenarios, and they did include in this report a blast scenario, but ultimately concluded that the sound decibels would be on par with that of a jet engine, and no sounds as such occurred before or during the collapse of World Trade Center 7. So this is interesting, and it's I think is pretty compelling because nobody reported hearing any sound of, like, an explosive going off, and to be able to have explosions powerful enough to demolish a building, like, you're gonna hear something
Post impact, right?
Post impact. So remember, World Trade Center 7 fell at 5:20 p.m.
Yeah,
like,
way
the other
later.
two, it's way later. It's the other two have already gone down, like, in the morning time. So this is hours.
It was like by 9 a.m. or something.
Yeah,
Like that. Yeah,
9, and then the other one fell at 10:30.
something like that. Yeah.
9:30 and 10:30.
Look, I'm not saying what happened was orchestrated or put together by the U.S. government, because as many criticisms as I have for this country, I'd like to think that we're not actively
Trying to kill
our citizens. I'm not saying that this was a thing. It is curious, though, how a building built, top of the line at that time, one of the largest buildings, the biggest feat of the U.S. at the time, could just be
wiped out.
And then a building next to it with a wider base could get hit by shrapnel and then also just completely collapse as well.
Which, yeah, what you said when you were listening to Alexa spout off the facts is that it's the first steel frame building to collapse due to fire.
Yeah, because it doesn't happen.
In the United States?
Probably since.
Okay, yeah.
Like, it doesn't happen. That's why they build them with steel.
So, right. And so, like, at the end of the day, whether or not the United States was involved in the attack, the fact that these were built so, I guess, poorly that could have happened is a crime in itself, I think.
Well, it's selling a bill of goods that did not show up.
Yeah. And to go to my next point, there are sprinkler systems in the building so that when a fire happens, the sprinklers turn on to put it out, and then you can avoid the whole thing collapsing. However, because of the plane crashes in World Trade Center 1 and 2, it damaged the sprinkler systems on the floor, which resulted in them not working.
Sure, that does make sense.
Yeah.
But do you think that the other floors would have brought water down? I don't know. Like, you...
I mean, if we're going off of NIST's explanation, though, and that weakening of the steel beams by the fire on the floors with fire on them is the cause, then that's where the fire needs to be put out. So I don't think water on the other floors is going to help.
Well, it could trickle down. I don't know. If I was in any skyscraper and a airplane hit above me, at no point am I going like, this is gonna fall on me. It just at that, well, at least before then,
I don't know.
Well,
I would think
well,
so.
now it's a little different. Now
I would think so. I think like being in a skyscraper with no threat, and it's gonna fall.
Well, I don't like skyscrapers or heights or anything like that. I don't like that because there's no easy way out.
No, I would rather not.
Yeah.
Put myself in that situation.
Put me on the second floor.
Don't put me in it. I don't want to be in it.
Show me the stairwell.
Also, so World Trade Center 7 had a sprinkler system also, which did not fail. However, after World Trade Center 1 and 2 fell, they caused damage to the city water main, and as a result, the system could not function. Which again, I can't say that that's not true, because the 200 some plus skyscrapers falling, sure, there's plenty of damage.
How convenient for all of these things to just coincide with each other. Water doesn't work. Buildings fall directly straight down.
Oh, just wait, I haven't even gotten to the other conspiracy theories.
Well, let's go. What are we waiting for?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna blast through these ones just because the biggest thing, the biggest issue people have with the accepting that the World Trade Centers fell based on the plane crash is the whole it looks like a controlled demolition, and that's what people focus on. But there's other pieces of compelling evidence, such as insider trading that happened leading up to 9/11.
I forgot about these.
An abnormal amount of put options were placed on United Airlines and American Airlines leading up to attacks. So that means that people are expecting the stock prices in these two airlines to decrease leading up to the attacks. And it was an abnormal amount. It wasn't like, oh, okay, a little extra people placed put options on either of these airlines. It was significant that people noticed.
Yeah. So I remember this. So this is how they tie it to the government. This is where,
because somebody
the insider knew.
Somebody knew that these two airlines were going to be involved, which I think that is pretty interesting. And then also a lot of people are like, oh, it's just a coincidence. So it's like, okay, so all of these things are already a coincidence, which just makes it
impossible.
Seem less coincidental.
Not even that. Just impossible.
The Pentagon crash, to move on to the next one, is suspicious, as many conspiracy theorists believe that the impact holes were much smaller than commercial American Airlines plane. Also, people are wondering why the airplane wasn't shot down prior to reaching the Pentagon in an area.
Yep.
And it hit the Pentagon in a spot that was vacant due to renovations. So these are...
So do you think that was just a scare tactic?
What do you mean?
Well, why would it hit an empty part of the building with a smaller plane?
Because they weren't trying to kill anybody.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. That flight that hit the Pentagon, American Airlines Flight 77, held 53 passengers out of a total capacity of 188. And then to talk about, which is way less than full capacity.
For sure.
And then to talk about the capacity of the other airlines that were involved, American Airlines Flight 11, which crashed into the North Tower, held 81 passengers out of 158 passenger capacity, which is half. United Airlines Flight 175, which crashed into the South Tower, held only 56 passengers out of a total of 168.
Which is a third.
And then United Airlines Flight 93, which crashed. That's the one that crashed into the field in Pennsylvania, which a lot of people are saying is staged. Can hold up to 182 passengers, and that day only carried 33.
It's weird that all those planes doing something like that would be either, well, below half capacity, all of them.
Yeah.
Which it's like one of those
It's like
things,
another coincidence. It's like there's 4 flights, and they're all coincidentally don't have that many people on them.
So what I'm saying is, how would Osama bin Laden know that all these planes were at half capacity? Not only that, but why would he choose to run into these buildings that all seemed to just collapse on each other, kind of uniformly, perfectly, like a demolition? How would he know half capacity planes means less resistance, and running into these buildings that just collapse on each other, or just collapse on themselves and not hitting anything else? Like, why is this so perfect? What is going on?
Because he didn't do it, the government did it. Exactly. Anyway, so we just established that all the planes are at less than half capacity.
Yes.
And according to the Bureau of Transportation Statistics...
That's a shitty word. I hate that word.
Quote,
statistics.
In the August preceding 9/11, the airline industry experienced what was then a record high in the number of airline passengers for a given month, when 65.4 million travelers took the air. So how come it drastically decreased? Or just those specific flights? If they were having a huge boom, why were all 4 of those flights at less than half capacity?
I wonder if those people, if there was any statistics into if those people were rerouted or denied the flight or something. Like if
or
there's some
I didn't look up how many tickets were booked and how many people showed up, because I have heard of like stories where they're just like, oh, I had a bad feeling, I just didn't take my flight that day, and then
Final
it was the one that
mm-hmm.
hit the World Trade Center. Those stories are so crazy to me, just thinking about like what could have happened.
The one I said last week about Eastern Flight 980, there was one of the people that was supposed to be on it didn't fly because he was like not feeling well, but he let his wife fly home.
Oh no!
And she
he probably feels horrible. He's like, it's my fault.
But it's curious. I just wonder,
why would you just leave your husband if he was sick though? Anyway,
I don't know.
Okay, so just to get through the last like little bit, because we're gonna hit like over an hour of the episode. So cell phone calls were faked. In one phone call from his son to his mother, he referred himself by his first and last name, which is so odd to me, because
I would never call you and go, this is Kyle Vicchioso.
First of all, can you call on an airplane?
No, I've tried.
Your reception doesn't work.
Yeah, I've tried.
I've tried too. I've just tried to get reception. It doesn't work.
I tried to text you once when I was on my way to Hawaii. Didn't work.
It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Especially back then. Like now, sure, we have like Wi-Fi. I could like FaceTime you, but it doesn't even work.
No.
Second of all, this is 2001.
Yeah, there is no Wi-Fi.
With reception better, we have 5G now, and I still can't call off an airplane.
Yeah.
What the heck? Second, and then this one, I tried to find specifically who it was that said his first and last name, but it was going to take too long, and I was kind of getting at the end, and it wasn't really that special.
Okay.
But it's so weird, because if I was dying and just called my mom, I wouldn't even tell her who it was. Like, she would know. She would have my phone number, and she would hear my voice. She would know. I wouldn't just be like, "Hi, it's Macy." Like whenever
Hi, Mom, it's Macy Myers.
I mean, maybe okay, before caller ID, sure, probably maybe I would have said it's Macy, but like I would have
had a cell phone back then. You didn't need to do that.
Yeah, I just would have been like, "Hi, I just want to say I love you. I'm gonna die." I don't know, but I wouldn't be like, "Mom, it's Macy Myers." Like, what?
Also,
who does that?
Also,
that's weird.
Not many people had cell phones, so the numbers you did have, you knew them.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. And then, okay, second to last, last. That was second to
Okay,
last.
all right.
Osama bin Laden initially denied the 9/11 attacks and then later claimed he was responsible. This leads people to believe that bin Laden was targeted due to his stake in the stock market and because President George W. Bush's personal business ventures in the Middle East. So they're saying that he had nothing to do with the attacks and that the government pinned it on him because he initially denies it, which I find odd because if Al-Qaeda is behind the attacks, like, they're not shy about their terrorist excursions at all.
Yeah, no.
They want everybody to know
so this is
that they're powerful and scary.
Yeah.
It's strange.
Well,
Why would they deny it? Like, was he afraid of the backlash? And maybe he didn't expect to kill 3,000 Americans that day, and maybe he was afraid of the backlash.
That's what I was trying to say
waking
earlier,
the
but you wouldn't
sleeping
let
giant. Because that argument was going somewhere else.
All right.
So, sure, but also, like, then why wake the sleeping giant? Like, everybody knows.
First of all, I love that you're using a line from the movie Pearl Harbor.
Because I was gonna make that comparison. Is like, this is what we do.
So, thanks.
Thanks, Bush.
Cool.
Anyway, overall, do I think the 9/11 attacks were staged by Bush? My answer is no. I don't. I don't think the government did it. Do I think that the government is hiding more than they know? Yes. In everything.
Yeah.
Not just this.
I agree
in
with you.
everything. Yeah.
Now we have a diplomatic
and
reason.
that's the conspiracy. Is like, we needed a reason to
We needed a reason.
get
Americans rallied around it, and boom, there it is.
Dun dun dun.